Aha. Okay. So I, because I suck, I made this other video about the Eglinton West LRT project, and it was like full of good information and stuff. But then at the same time, it was like, oh, Eglinton is just, it's excluding everyone who doesn't drive, when really it's got, this great bikeway right next to it. And I was kind of talking about how it's sort of, it makes it tough to be a cyclist at the intersections and I don't know. Anyway, so like my video was like 40 something minutes long, and it was half about intersection design and road design in general, and half about the project. So I wanted to make one that was just about the project. So the Eglinton West LRT, the company who's doing it, they are recommending that it be at grade, so it be on the level with drivers, and that it be a tram line, such as the I don't know, the examples that I would cite are, the tram line that we have along St. Clair West, but of course this is, on a narrower street, so the driving situation is different. And it's this tram line is kind of underused, because right now it's not that long. It doesn't really, I don't know, it kind of sucks. It's such a great tram line, but I have very rare occasion to use it. But I think it's going to be part of something else, and I don't know, it's going to be more useful in the future, I hope. Anyway, the other thing you can look, I'm going elsewhere right now just to show off kind of, this is what an at-grade LRT facility sort of looks like. What's the part of Queens Quay that has the thing? Is it Queens Quay or Lake Shore? Or I guess I'm trying to just. Where is the LRT part of this? Yeah, so this is the other, this is a nice at-grade facility. And at-grade stuff is nice because transit users don't have to walk up and down stairs and stuff. And then we, here in Toronto, we also have the other type of stuff, the subway type of stuff, subway/SkyTrain type of stuff that turns into a in the sky facility when it's when the ground is low, and turns into a subway when the ground is high, and whoop, just goes under stuff and over stuff. And those type of facilities are nice because they're out of the way of the street. So it's all about the debate between, do we keep transit users out of sight, out of mind, and hold on to all of our extra turning lanes, and try to maximize driving space, or maintain maximum driving space, or do we sort of put transit users literally on the level with drivers and stuff, and go for what is like really internationally a more normal system, and also very cheap by comparison. This is the debate. And so within the stakeholders advisory group, the sort of I guess the citizen committee that I was able to get into because of my involvement with the Ward 5 Pedestrian Safety and Cycling Committee. I'm like one of the current chairs. So ended up getting invited to the first stakeholders advisory group meeting. And so there's like two things going on at this meeting. number one, the debate between, at grade and above grade, and number two, the what the proposal, what the proposals are, details of the proposal, and like a fool, I attended the latter instead of getting into the white hot debate over which of their four options we should choose. Option number one is the designer recommended at-grade facility, and option number four is the above-grade facility recommended by this the faction within the stakeholders advisory group that prefers that is they kind of designed, apparently spent a couple years designing their own recommendation for an above grade LRT, but either way the idea basically begins here, west of Weston Road at Eglinton. And so the option four, there's some disagreement over the actual details of the option. There's some members of the advisory group that are saying like the company, their interpretation of it, got it wrong. So hopefully at the next, hopefully there will be some correction on that, and we'll get actual reconciled details on that. But basically, their idea is to have the subway pop out and become a SkyTrain like here, and then run next to Eglinton as an elevated LRT, and then have a station, I think, here. And I think the location of the station isn't really the debate. It's about whether it pops out here and goes above grade, or pops out right there and is on the surface. So the details of like I think along Eglinton, in order to accommodate it being on the surface, and the whole project is like between here, just west of Weston, and it goes through this this intersection with the 427, and I think it ends in Centennial Park, or it manages the Centennial Park area. But for Ward 5, since Ward 5 ends basically at the Humber River, most of my focus has been on that, but also on the kind of area between the 427 and the Humber, which is where people are concerned about there being additional driver congestion, as a result of lane reductions that might be necessary to put in the at-grade facility. And there's like full details about this whole thing on the Eglinton, on their website, finally. But I wanted to talk about just the theoretical incursion on driving space, and what the actual implications for congestion. And I want to suggest that the congestion here is not it's not that serious. It's not really an issue, and it's largely illusory. And I focused way too much on this in this other video that I made, but I just want to point out that with these type of roads, where we've got intersections that are the same width as the road, the intersections are going to function as bottlenecks. So the road segments between the intersections don't need to be as wide. I think the lane reductions that they're proposing are mostly about the extra turning lanes approaching the intersections. And some of these intersections are a little bit wild in terms of like ballooning up to, 5 lanes and even 7 lanes in some places. And I think it's overkill looking at it just from a theoretical perspective, but when I go through this route during any rush hour, that's when I really think it's overkill, because I can observe the factual lack of congestion along this route. This road has so much extra capacity that I just don't buy the. Okay, it's not about my opinion. This road has tons of extra capacity. The designers have recognized that. The city is recognizing this with various routes around the GTA where there's extra capacity. And this is really one of them. And the designers have pointed out much of the traffic on Eglinton is just bypassing the highway. The people who are using the highway and skipping off of it for Eglinton and Jane to skip around this part. And so whenever whatever happens on Eglinton that might restrict driving traffic or open up more space for driving traffic, the amount of congestion is just going to remain the same, because any extra capacity is going to be filled up by highway users, and any extra congestion and pressure is going to be relieved when they go back to the highway again. So and stop using Eglinton. This is what the designers found. There's like, look, this just, no matter what happens with Eglinton, it just fluctuates because it's just relieving the expressway. So Eglinton can expand, and it's just going to, a whole bunch more drivers are just going to use it, and Eglinton can contract, and those drivers will just use the expressway with no negative consequence to anyone. But the positive consequence to transit users of being at grade is pretty dramatic. They get to just walk onto the tram right here on the surface instead of walking up into the sky. And just to talk about the congestion, it can look super congested when you're in the middle of a whole pack of drivers and when everybody's been waiting super long to cross an intersection because the intersection is super wide. Like, if there was no pedestrians and no cyclists, and no slow drivers, then this would be super fast. But because you have to accommodate people crossing, and because you got to pushing drivers through at high speed requires more space between the drivers, so you need these long signal times and stuff. And because long signal times make people want to race between the intersections, the effect of this type of design is you end up traveling around in a pack of other drivers. Everybody kind of feels like there's more congestion than there really is, because it is congested because you're racing in a pack. And so it feels tight, but then it's not actually tight. There's all this extra space. So having like tons and tons of lanes, it's kind of a big waste of space, because the intersections are still slow. They're still bottlenecking traffic. There's like crazy Martin Grove activity here. So like this, you end up in these spots where it looks mega congested. From most drivers' point of view, well, this day was actually congested. That was an actual terrible rush hour. I guess that was during some construction that we were seeing on Martin Grove. It's all about the forensic Google Street View activity. Okay, one of the things that they proposed for this spot is, this is going to turn into a normal, oh shoot, what is it? This one is going to turn into a normal intersection. One of these flyovers is going to be just an intersection, and there's going to be a different, I think, bike path through this area. But to get back to the illusory congestion situation, you got to actually go to Eglinton during rush hour and don't drive, or pull over and check out the actual pattern of the traffic, because it's always a big rush of drivers and then nothing for a long time, and you're like, well, it's rush hour, where is everybody? Well, they're trapped at the intersection because the intersections are mega wide, so it takes forever to get through, so you're stacked up, but then the roads between the intersections are largely empty. And this is how we can have the city saying, well, there's extra capacity, and the designers saying, well, there's extra capacity, and me standing on the side of the road videotaping it and showing that there's extra capacity, but still to drivers it's seeming like there's a bunch of extra congestion. So I think the effect of the LRT on these intersections, if it's at grade, is going to be that the signal timing is a bit tighter, so the pressure is going to be a bit relaxed, just because each signal is not going to be like this crazy time penalty. And then some of the roads leading to the intersections are going to have lane reductions, so there will just be a missing turning lane or something like that, and some of that activity is going to end up sort of getting shoved into the intersection, which, since these intersections are massive, is great. is a good situation. So the project might also be able to facilitate us finally having this tiny little gap here of the Humber bike path fixed. And my point to the designers was, okay, this is another overkill intersection for drivers at 6 lanes, and it's next to this spot where people keep arguing about, oh, why can't we just build a bridge off to the side here? Well, Scarlett, talking about extra capacity, Scarlett is the poster child of extra capacity, and the city is already going to be building rebuilding Scarlett, or changing Scarlett, examining Scarlett up to Eglinton, but I don't know if that includes fixing this tiny little spot. It's scarcely 20 meters of space, but it's really good at convincing cyclists that this is where the path ends, and it's just such a weird area for cycling through right now, because people just end up coming up to Eglinton and turning around and going back. Or this is where you go, this is where you bike northwest along the Humber and then go west toward the airport, or the other way around. You don't go to Jane, because then you're stranded. There's nothing going on here, which is why the city is going to apparently build a bike path on the north side of Eglinton to connect with this road here near Piran Park. And this is already a great cycling route. It's just, it sucks along the grass, but you can see, if you go, or even on satellite, you can see this is like the current cycling path through the grass that's been worn in, because going up and down Jane is so terrible on a bike in either direction, and so artificially too, because, of course the city has confirmed to us that there was only enough room here for a sidewalk. There's not enough room here for a multi-use path. Oh no. It's just too tight. There's not enough grass space to connect this to the north. This is what they've said. So and I don't know, somehow this is supposed to be an awesome commuting connection through this park here and up this like extreme hill. It's a really pretty intense climb. Even walking up that is ridiculous, and it kind of sucks to be going downhill a whole bunch. You know, if you're cycling east, or if you're, I don't know, if you're trying to bridge this gap here, you're like, okay, well, it's already a hilly area. I'm already kind of tired, and now I'm going to go uphill and then downhill and then back uphill again and get up to, yay. And meanwhile, the drivers don't have to go uphill and downhill and back uphill again. They just get to use this nice gradual slope, and there's not even enough of them to fill up the road anytime, day or night, on any of these roads, but they're using them so fast that even though there's tons of extra space, you can't bike on them. And you know, of course, we don't have room for a multi-use trail on either side of Jane. Oh no. Anyway, I'll complain about Eglinton Flats in other videos, but what I'm trying to underscore here is like, this is ridiculous, and the city is finally going to bridge this little gap here to create this connection, which is fantastic because it's so easy to get west from here or northwest on a bike. It's super fast. It's wonderful. In this other video, I was like, oh, Eglinton excludes cyclists. It totally, you know, it doesn't. I do sort of feel that way because the intersections are so nasty for cycling across. And the Eglinton West LRT project could end up improving that situation. But within our ward here in Ward 5, this is where the missing link is for cycling between the downtown and the airport, because you can get to this spot, you can get to and from here, from the southeast here, from downtown. And I'm illustrating this badly. It's like, okay, they want to facilitate this connection between the downtown and the airport, right, for transit and for cycling and everything. And they want to facilitate the connection between the neighborhood that's right in the middle here. Like, these are the two big employment zones, downtown and the airport. And then this is the kind of, you know, this is where like all the housing is. So they're just like, okay, there's tons of people living here and commuting to and from these other spots, and they're already observing that, of course. And it's just artificially difficult for non-drivers, and let's just solve that. For the cycling situation, this is really the gap. Eglinton Flats is the gap, and it's hilarious because this is where there's tons and tons of space for all sorts of stuff, and we built all the way up to here. You know, we've got this fantastic crossing. It's probably the best crossing in all of the city of a of a major bridge, and it's hard to see here, but this is a fantastic, absolutely fantastic bikeway, which is of course underused and almost useless because all it does is it brings you to, it's wonderful because you can get to here. And when you get to here, then you can access the northeast. And if you can, it's just not even usually worth trying to go southeast to northwest through here, because it's better to do it along Scarlet, even though this little segment of Scarlet, and I'm talking about cycling with this, even though this segment of Scarlet is so sketchy to do on a bike. Look at this person, absolutely terrified, even though there's not enough driving traffic to justify how dangerous this is for cycling. But like, oh yeah, we gotta spread out one lane of drivers over 3 lanes, you know, going this way to exclude everyone else. So what I'm talking about, everyone being excluded except for drivers, without real massive benefit to drivers, I'm talking about Scarlet, where got loads of extra capacity, and it's like water everywhere, not a drop to drink. This is like what it's like with roads. You're like, yeah, there's 3 drivers, but all of this is super dangerous for cyclists, even right at this second. So this is why they're they're going to change Scarlet, but I mentioned Scarlet right now because this is the other ridiculous route that is artificially difficult to bike through that you end up taking to avoid Jane or Eglinton, or, you know, this segment of Jane or this segment of Eglinton, because it's so artificially difficult. So the city bridging this gap with a bike path that just goes to this one segment of road here is fantastic. That's wonderful. I think they also I don't know what the future plan for this bikeway is exactly, but there's changes proposed to this whole segment of Eglinton going across Weston as well, which would be nice because there's no point in trying to have a highway-style intersection that integrates pedestrians and cyclists and drivers and is this massive and uses this number of lanes and crushes transit users into this. This is a hilarious scene all the time. You got like 30 people here. You got like 5 drivers here. It gets really ridiculous, and then there will be like 3 cyclists stuck behind them because it's I don't know what the point is in using 41 meters for drivers and squishing pedestrians down to, you know, 3, and doing this overly complicated setup. As a driver, I never found it to be good. I'm like, just this, no, this like whole design of stuff is going out because I don't think it was ever intended to facilitate driving. I think it was intended to exclude everyone else by design. But so the project starts here in Eglinton Flats. I encourage everyone to check out all the details of this and weigh in on, you know, whether you think it needs to be in the sky, underground. There's options 2 and 3 to check out that I haven't talked about. I've talked about option 1, which is the preferred by the designers, at grade, preferred by me, and option 4, which is the SkyTrain setup, and then 2 and 3, I think the details are mixed a little bit, but it's all finally available on their website, so I don't have to try to remember all the details. But in considering this, people have got to be aware that congestion can be illusory, and that it can also be, you know, properly observed from like next to the road. And if you're wondering, you know, why am I experiencing congestion along Eglinton, when the city and these designers are talking about there being extra capacity to accommodate some lane reductions here and there, what is with this discrepancy? Bike along the bike path on Eglinton at rush hour, a few different rush hours, and just observe how traffic is moving, and it's moving in waves. It's moving in these big waves with a ton of space between them. So that's the extra capacity. So welcome to the Eglinton LRT project. The Crosstown LRT is going to, you know, transform travel. Eglinton is a wonderful crosstown route, and it going through this area is a huge deal because this is really where transit gets difficult, and it's where cycling gets difficult, and unevenly difficult too. You get these spots where you just bike through them so easy and it's great, and then these spots where it's just artificially difficult, like yes. And you got these spots where the road is so wide and it's just like a NASCAR race, and then it's like, what's the point, because you got to squish through some other spot, so it might as well all be a bit narrower. if it has to be, especially since a surface LRT has such great potential to ease all other types of congestion, because suddenly this route is just going to be really easy to get through using transit and using bicycles and stuff. And so there'll just be fewer drivers on the road who don't want to be drivers. This is the problem we've got right now, is the road is kind of being spammed with people who are driving, who would prefer not to be driving, and getting them out of their cars is really good for the people who prefer to drive and who don't want to get out of their cars. So anyway, I hope the springtime is going wonderful, and I feel terrible about not posting a video with more detail and less, less me going, blah, 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 whatever. But I just want to put something out there to put this on everybody's radar. You know, the Eglinton West thing, whether it's above or on the ground or below the ground, it makes a big difference. Makes a huge difference in cost, makes a huge difference in accessibility, and it's probably not going to make any noticeable difference in driving congestion.